call the February 27th, 2020 Peninsula School District Board of Directors regular meeting to order. Please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome all. This business meeting of the Board of Directors is being held in public in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and is being live streamed. With regard to routine matters, board members have reviewed the agenda and have had the opportunity to clarify questions with the superintendent prior to the board meeting. Such matters are often processed without additional comment or debate. With that, I ask, are there any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Natalie? Sure. It has been moved by David and seconded by Natalie to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has been approved. Dr. Jarvis, will you now present your superintendent's report?
I'll keep this very brief. It's a thank you to the broad community for the work that was done on the levy. The final approval was 61.93% of our school levy, which stabilizes the funding for the next 3 years through 2023. I know how much many people worked on this levy to get the word out throughout the community and how important it is, how significant it is to our employees and to the kids in the school district. So it's just a hearty thank you to all for that kind of work on behalf of the kids in the school, and to say thank you to a broad community for approving our levy and stabilizing our funding for the next 3 years. With that, I would conclude my report to the board.
Thank you. I will now ask our student representatives to present their reports, and we'll start with Ashley from Henderson Bay.
All right, so we just got done with our crush sales, and we sold 90, which is like everyone in the school pretty much bought one, so that was really awesome. And then last night was our Fondies takeover, and it was our first fundraiser for our trip to Guatemala, so that felt really good to get done. And on March 7th, we have our pancake breakfast at Henderson Bay High School. We started doing pods at our school on Tuesdays and Thursdays for students that don't have internships. And I have a one-day-a-week internship, so I've gotten to see what they're like. And they started, like the first time we had them, it was very long, but they've worked with the times and they figured it out, so it'll work out really well. And they seem to be working pretty good. And then our internships are going strong. We have a student at a salon, one at Backpacks for Kids, Best Western, Mackard Automotive, one at a farm, which is really cool. And we have many more, but those are just some of them. And then, yeah. So, nice.
Ashley, how many kids are doing the Guatemala trip?
We have 4 from Henderson Bay, and then there's kids from Gate Harbor and Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Lena from Peninsula High School.
Hello. So breaking down the walls was a success, and I heard a lot of great feedback from our students. They enjoyed it and loved it, and we're keeping the momentum going and seeing the kindness throughout the school. Share the Love Month was great, and our compliment card wall was filled, if you know that. It's the famous wall in our cafeteria. It's wonderful. We just wrapped up winter sports, and we are happy to say that every PHS team made it past postseason play.
All right.
So shout out to those people. And, shout out to one of our state champions, Nolan Casey from wrestling, so that was awesome. Spring sports starts this Monday, which is great. And shout out to the unified basketball team for placing second at districts, so shout out to those who are involved. Spring fling is scheduled for March 7th, and, and the spring musical, Hunchback of Notre Dame, is to be determined. And leadership students attended the Serve Us Leadership Conference a few days ago, and it was wonderful. And the choir went to Yakima for All-State, which was awesome, so congrats to the choir students. PHS DECA will be competing in state at Bellevue next week, so that's awesome. And Mr. Peninsula is March 12th at 7, which is like the men's beauty pageant, so that'll be really fun. Show up, it's going to be amazing. So yes, that'll be it. Thank you. Any questions?
What's the reason for the, what is it, the beauty pageant for men?
Oh, yes.
Is it
So
a fun-
basically, it's
is it a
beauty pageant.
fundraiser?
It's a fundraiser.
It's a
for prom.
fundraiser,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that fundraiser goes to help decrease the ticket price to senior prom,
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
which right
Yeah.
now is
it's a little bit high, but
a little
we're
bit high.
working on it.
Okay,
Awesome.
very good.
Thank you.
Breaking down the walls, I know several of us were able to participate. It was phenomenal, and we will talk about that later. But I met two new Peninsula High School students, and I've seen them in the community since, and I think it accomplished everything that it laid out for the high school. So I'm pretty excited about it, but we can talk about that more later. Okay, and Kira is not here tonight, so we look forward to her report on the next meeting. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. We'll move on to comments from the community. Members of the audience wishing to speak to the board are asked to identify themselves for the record before sharing their comments. We ask that comments not be personally directed, abusive, or obscene. In the interest of fairness, there is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Please note that this is an opportunity to speak to the board and that the board will listen but not engage in dialogue or offer a response. Thank you for respecting these guidelines. With that, I ask Greg Bowers.
Hello, school board members, community. Appreciate your time to speak with you today. My name is Greg Bowers. I'm with the Heat Frost Insulators Union. I brought with me tonight 3 community members that live here, Beverly Vidovic, Theron Wolford, and Isaac Daniels. I have concerns over the building of the selection of subcontractors for the Pioneer Elementary project. I have reached out to the contractors, made these concerns known with not a positive response. I have reached out to each individual school board via email with no response. So I'm here today to read that email into the record. Dear Peninsula School Board members, I'm writing today regarding, this is on the 17th of February. Regarding an unqualified contractor that was hired to work on Pioneer Elementary, I've attempted twice to resolve this with the hiring contractor. Excuse me. I've also CC'd the general and Patrick Gillespie from the superintendent and the president of the school board to make these things known. The engineering firm for this project wisely put in language in their specifications, skilled craftsman language, to protect the taxpayers. This language reads, and I quote, skilled mechanics who have successfully completed an apprenticeship training program or another craft training program by the Department of Labor. What does this language mean? In Washington State, this language means that the workers on this project will have completed at least 10,000 hours on the job experience, over 800, 800 hours of classroom instruction. By law, any contractor can send their workforce to that training facility. Why should you insist on specifications being upheld? Like I said, these specifications are currently in those documents, but they were ignored. The publicly funded project, contractors, that we all have to pay the same wage. Contractors are not able to use a workforce that's hired off the street. They have to be a trained workforce. Ensures the works can be performed formally by a trained person that can actually do the work. Some areas that we have found contractors cut corners to win lowest bid are substituting cheaper product after they are awarded the bid. Improper application, not completely insulate systems that are required, and just not insulating at all. This is a huge burden on the taxpayers, and you know, we caught one contractor in huge prevailing wage theft from their workers. That contractor no longer is in business, which is good. Mechanical installation is roughly 1% of your school project, 1% of the overall cost. If not insulated properly, it will have a much longer and higher cost impact to the lifetime and the health of that building over years. You know, we're trying to build a 30 to 50 year building, not a 5-year building. So some of the issues that we're finding: condensation after installation, corrosion under installation. All this leads to breakdown in equipment and higher energy costs over the lifetime of the building. As mentioned above, your current specifications has this in there, but for some reason on this project, it was not followed. I'm going to skip the last 2 paragraphs. I have included, and for the record, the actual bid specifications, what the qualifications are, and I've highlighted in the bidder's instructions all the areas where this forum or this school board can take action if needed. If you have any questions, I'm always open for debate and talk. Like I said, if the email would have just been responded saying we're looking into it, I wouldn't be here tonight, and we'd be celebrating other things. So that's my presentation. Appreciate it.
Greg.
Thank you.
Can I give this to you?
We'll take it and we'll get it out. Thank you. All right. Next up then would be Carla Swanston? Swainston, my apologies.
Hi, I'm
Hi,
Carla
Carla.
Swainston. I am a proud 30-year employee of Peninsula School District, and it's my last year, so I'm kind of excited about that.
Congratulations.
I'm here as a representative of the public school employees that are employed by you in our clerical unit. We are here tonight because our concern regarding the mistreatment of our PSC classified employees. PSC members are not only employees like the Peninsula School District, of the Peninsula School District, they are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, neighbors, friends, taxpayers, and voting members of this community. Many are not only employees of this district, they are the parents of children who attend school in this district, and some of us have even had a connection that reaches back decades, having graduated from this very district. PSC will not tolerate Peninsula School District administration demeaning, belittling, disrespecting, embarrassing, or verbally assaulting our members. PSC will not tolerate Peninsula School District administrators menacing, intimidating, yelling at, or bullying our members. This kind of treatment will not be tolerated by anyone, regardless of what position they hold in this district. We demand to be treated with the respect that we deserve as professionals, period. We have some information to distribute to the board.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not on a first-name basis, so forgive me. Lori,
I'll just take
Chuck,
them all.
Natalie, David,
We may need to put them through Brooke and then Brooke will get them out to us.
Deborah,
Yeah, that's me.
thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna get them back after.
We'll give them back. I just want to make sure. if Brooke
I don't
needs-
need them back.
Do you need
No.
to see them at all? No. Thank you. We'll make sure everyone gets those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you all. With that, I move on to our district reports, capital projects, Patrick Gillespie and Calvin Gassaway. Is Patrick here?
Thanks for having us tonight. February 12th marked the one-year anniversary of the Capital Facilities Bond election, and we have come a long way in 1 year plus. I'm going to start with ES9. We received our D10 from OSPI. A contract is now pending with Neely Construction. Construction is scheduled to start in March, and today we had a groundbreaking ceremony. Was held earlier today with great turnout from our community partners. And all of you guys were there too, which I greatly appreciate. Thank you. Pioneer is under construction and progress is being made. We have a new emergency exit on the north end of the building that is completed. We have shoring on the north end of the building that is beginning, which will allow us to start connecting the building at some point. Artendale. First advertisement for bid went out today, so another big step. We have that out there advertised. We have received the D6 from OSPI, and we are working on the D7 now. We continue to work with Pierce County on our permitting. Groundbreaking for that one is scheduled right now for April 23rd, 10 a.m. Of course, we'd like to see you all there if you can be there, of course. Evergreen remains on schedule and advertises March 19th with bids due April 16th. We received the D6 from OSPI and working on the D7 currently. We continue to work with Pierce County on permitting, and our groundbreaking ceremony for Evergreen is scheduled for May 6th at 11 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, not as long-winded as Jeff.
It's all right. All right. With that, any questions? And just kind of as a reminder and information for all the, when you're referring to D process, that is referring to state match. So that's
Yes.
additional funds that we're bringing into, so.
Yeah, thank you
Correct.
for clarifying. Yep, absolutely.
Very good. Well, congratulations and
Thank you.
move ahead.
Yep.
On time and, what's our statement at the
Yeah,
end of
we
every
are.
capital project?
Yeah, on time and on budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Did you have a question?
Nope. Normally they all speak.
It's short and sweet. All right. We'll move on to our assistant superintendents, John Helwick and Dan Gregory. Who's first? All right, Dan Gregory, and did you bring friends?
I brought lots of friends. I'm not bringing an extra chair today. So Dr. Potts and the Unified Sports coaches would come up and join you, that would be fantastic. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come forward and report out on the great things that are happening in our district. As we talked about previously, early on in the year, we kind of gave you a long running laundry list, but we've found, and I think you had mentioned that you appreciate the fact that when we really get to drill down and see some of the really great work that our staff are doing with our students, that it just adds a little different perspective to things. So tonight I have part of the staff from Peninsula High School and Dr. Potts with me. Next to me is Jenny Buys, and next to her is Joelle Ricard, and Wendy Christensen is in the back there. These are the leaders of our unified sports, unified basketball team from Peninsula High School. And so I had heard about this unified sports group, and oddly enough, I just happened to be in the Enumclaw-Buckley area on a Saturday. True story, true story. Yeah, how is that possible? And our team was playing up there in Enumclaw, and so I had the opportunity to stop in at Enumclaw High School and watch a game, and I feel like we should acknowledge John Yellowlees in the back there as well, because he was there and very much has supported this effort. There's this little thing on Sports Center that they say the best thing I saw today, and the best thing I saw that day was that unified sports basketball game. It was really a cool thing. Great for all of the students involved. But three parts to what I'd like to present tonight. The first thing is the unified group here, and then Dr. Potts is going to talk a little bit about breaking down the walls, and then I'll finish with one of the things that's on your consent agenda. But for now, I am very happy to hand the microphone to Jenny Buys, or Joelle Ricard.
First, Joelle.
Well, thank you for having us, first of all. And I know Lena is one of our partner players, so I know she's given you a little bit of background information on Unified, but just to kind of go over what Unified is, it is a athletic team that provides the opportunity for students of all abilities to come together and build relationships and work on leadership skills through the competitive spirit of sports. And also, of course, to have a little bit of fun together. And I think the best way to share the impact that Unified had is to read a parent comment, some parent feedback about it. So this was written by Sherry Kimball. She is the parent to both a player, Joey, and a partner player, Allie. And she writes, Unified basketball at Peninsula has been amazing for Joey and our entire family. it brings us all such joy to watch Joey have fun doing something he absolutely loves with his peers and being able to compete in a team sport. Without Unified, this would not be possible, so we are thrilled. The coaches and mentor players, including our daughter Allie, have been so wonderful. They are all so full of compassion and joy. This experience has taught Joey, Allie, and our entire family so much. We were so excited for Peninsula to start Unified Sports this year. Thank you very much for helping our kids excel. And just to build on that, when we started the team, we just envisioned that it would be a basketball team, something fun. We didn't have any big dreams for it other than something for kids to do, maybe make some friends, have some fun after school. And it ended up with the support of the community and the district, thank you guys, being so much more than that, and really being an avenue for students to develop lifelong friendships that will impact them, and I think throughout the rest of their lives, they're a lot of change makers on the team. So I'm really proud to have been a part of that.
So, I'm Jenny Bice. This is not my favorite thing, so I promise you I will get a little bit better as this goes on. I'm super passionate about this, so that's, at first you'll hear the nerves and the face will get all red, but it'll get good. The thing I want to start off is I really want to thank Dr. Jarvis and the school board for the opportunity to be here. But the bigger part to that is there were lots of seeds that were planted so this could bloom into this wonderful thing. And that seed started really with the Derricks, Jonah and his parents. They moved from Colorado and were a part of this program and really were seeking something like this out. I really think Joelle and her leadership to really pursue trying to figure out what this thing could be, what it could look like. And I also think we need to give a really big shout out to Graham Schmidt. His leadership, he's a former Peninsula High School student who was really invested in working with all population, student population at Peninsula High School, specifically in the special education area, who kind of brought like this cool swag about being a part of something that you might not know anything about. And so that's basically where I want to start. I've been coaching, I'm 45, and I've been coaching since I was in middle school. So I've coached everything, and I've had lots of really cool experiences as an athlete and coach, and I'd say, hands down, this is the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. Lots of people want to say that the mentor-athlete thing is that kids are just there telling them what to do. No, this is basketball where kids are playing together just like you would at recess or any other place. So it's everybody has a role, everyone has a job. It's not like helping other kids do it. It's how can we build a team together and make this thing really fly. So welcome to Peninsula High School Unified Basketball. The thing that we started off with is none of us knew what this would look like. We have students who have canes. We have students that have one-on-one support all the time. We have some students that are total baller status and are draining threes all over the place. And when you bring that together at a practice, that can be a challenging thing. So how do we make this happen for everyone? So we sat down and we were like, what are going to be our goals? So that way we could keep a perspective. So this is, GTY means greater than yourself. What are we going to do that's greater than ourselves today to do this basketball thing? So these are their goals. They wanted to work hard. They wanted to have fun through learning and improving their basketball skills. They wanted to make new friends. They wanted to help others. They wanted to try something new. They wanted to compete. One of our friends wanted to do a dunk, and so I said, let's talk about a personal dunk, because that could look different for different people. And then learn how to communicate better. We started practice the first week of December. We practiced it for just 2 hours a week, 1 hour each session, Monday and Friday. We had games on Saturdays, and we played 4 weekends in a row. You can see that. Our first weekend, We played two 15-minute games. The next weekend we played a 20-minute game. And then when they told us it was time for the championship, I said, game on, let's go. We earned our way from a 9 o'clock game to a game at 2:10 to be in the championship, and we lost in that final round to get second place overall. So I'm super proud of, not that we were in the championship, but if you're thinking about 15 kids who've never practiced longer than an hour, that have very short attention spans, the ability to stay connected and do something as powerful as what we did for that many hours is, I tear, I'm trying not to cry right now, was awesome. Okay, this is our roster, a unified team. There are 3 divisions in the unified. So we played in Division 3, which means that we're in the developmental stage, means we don't know what we got. Let's see what happens. And so that's 15 players. If you play in Divisions 2 or 3, those teams have only 10 players, and you don't know, you can't tell who's the mentor and who's the athlete in those programs. They're very competitive. The reason we weren't able to go into that is we had kids that needed another one-on-one support kid. We always had somebody on the court that had an extra person. The way it works is you have 3 athletes and 2 mentors playing 5v5 against another team. So this is our roster. You can see we had a lot of senior leadership, including Lena, and so we really need to make sure that we grow and foster mentors that are amazing as the kids that we do have in the program right now. So if you're interested in that, that's our roster. And these are the pictures of the things that happened that were amazing. Our very first game, I have no idea what to expect. I am an athlete and I love to compete. So they didn't know what to do with me. I'm running baseline. I'm telling kids, right, left, and everyone's like, who's that crazy lady? The best part, though, is that our basketball team came to see our very first game. Everybody on the boys basketball team was there. We didn't have a ref, so the boys basketball coach, head basketball coach came down and refed. Again, tears. I didn't ask them to do that. That wasn't something that I planned. That was totally natural and developed in its own way. So here's pictures of us hanging out, doing our thing. This is when we were in the championship round. You can see Ross Filkins came to watch the kids play. And then this is when we got our second place medal. So, and then this is a video. It says, why do we need permission? I really want to show that.
Can you send the link to us?
Yes, I can share it. But it is really Lena made this really cool hype video. And it highlights every player and every mentor, and it has some like footage of the game, and it
captures the spirit of unified.
Yeah.
We look forward to the link.
Yeah,
to
it
see
is
that.
really, a cool, very powerful thing. Again, as somebody who's coached lots of sports teams and been a high-level athlete myself, I kind of have a vision of what's supposed to be excellent. And I will tell you, and I'm trying not to get, every single kid had their own way of being excellent. And when I would look at it, I would say, that's not my way, but that is really cool. Like, I get goosebumps, and I don't get goosebumps. I really think my way's the best way. So, to really see these kids and their friendships, the genuine friendships that crossed beyond the basketball. I see our athletes having lunch together. I was supervising a choir trip, and our athletes were sitting together having pizza. So this isn't a forced interaction. It's genuine, super cool, and awesome. So the highlights were definitely the new friendships. The friendships that I have, I've taught special ed for 22 years before I became the success coach. And the relationships I have with these students is, I've never been invited to the talent show. I got 6 personal invites to go and watch them, right? Like, It's a Connor Bowman swims with my son. I've watched him race every single time. He's not as verbal as some other kids, and if I'm in a radius of a room, it's Coach Bice. It's Coach Bice. Like there's not. It's like I'm a rock star. It really is like really cool. So the new friendships, definitely. We really did learn a tremendous amount of basketball. To have every kid's moving up and down the court, rebounding, making steals. Like you can only focus on
Couple of stuffs.
one thing at a time, and it was like, let's get up and down, let's shoot some baskets. But to see all of those things really come together was really awesome. I would say the super fans, the families of our athletes, like again, lots of time together, really special, it's a cool time. People take for granted that sports are for everybody, and these families haven't had the same opportunities in sports, so they love to be there. And it's been a long time as a high school coach where people really want to be there. The boys basketball team, again, I'll never forget that. The district administrators that took time to go to Enumclaw, right, you randomly there. John Yeloise, Danielle O'Leary, coming to the games and supporting us.
And I'm going to add in, we had para-educator support for a lot of our students that made the unified season possible. So another thank you for making it possible for us to have para support to make it possible.
And so what's next? We are going to do unified soccer at Peninsula High School, but there's a really big push to get this at Gig Harbor, and we're supporting getting that started at Gig Harbor High School. So I think that's.
Well, Joelle and Jenny, thank you for your passion. You see it, feel it, hear it, and super excited that program has begun at Peninsula High School, and look forward to the growth at potentially Gig Harbor and such. And
Are you talking to that again? Or
I was going to go really quick and then hand it to Dr. Potts, unless you have questions
I
for
was just
Joelle
going
and
to ask,
Jenny.
I noticed on your opening slide, you had the Special Olympics. Is there a connection to that?
Yeah, it is. So Unified is under the umbrella of Special Olympics. The differentiation is that Special Olympic sports focus specifically on individuals with intellectual disabilities, while Unified's focus is bringing together individuals with intellectual disabilities and without intellectual disabilities, and it focuses on having a 50-50 split.
So a cultural shift, a collaboration,
An increase in that inclusive kind of climate in the school.
Okay, because I was just asking because I worked with Special Olympics in Guam a long time ago, and there weren't mentors participating. They were individual competitions. Well, here's mentors. Can you just explain what's the purpose behind mentors playing with the?
So again, it's a collaboration. It's establishing an inclusive community, and also the lack of availability for kids that have disabilities to play on sports teams. And so when you get into Division I and Division II, like I said, when you look out there, you have no idea who's the mentor athlete and who are the athletes. And the opportunities that a program like this that has that everyone gets to participate where they're at is pretty cool.
And one of the main barriers for students with disabilities in inclusion is just that there is not a lot of awareness from the wider community about what individuals with disabilities do in their day or how to interact. And this is an opportunity for mentor students to come and to really develop natural, organic, genuine friendships, and then to go out and spread what they learned with their friends and everybody that they come into contact with. So it really grows that in the school, and I think we've noticed that in the halls of PHS.
Good. Nice. Cool. Other questions or comments?
Just to say, he's not the only one who thinks you're a rock star. I think we all do. So thank you so much for that. I'm so excited that you're here because we've heard so much about it over the last couple of months, and I'm sorry that I missed the games, but this is such a treasure for our district and our kids, and we're super proud of you for taking this and making it special.
Really thank the Derricks and Joelle. When we started in a new league. North Thurston has unified unified sports in general, and the head coach said, "Hey Jenny, you teach special ed. Why don't you guys have unified?" And I was like, "I don't have that time to figure that out." Like, even though it's probably the best thing I've ever done, when it was said to me, I was like, I don't know how I do that. So the people that paved the way, the Derricks, Graham Schmidt, Joelle, like, they make it easy for me to take a lot of credit that I don't deserve.
Jenny,
but I love
the Derricks is a family.
Yeah, the
Okay.
Derricks. That's
I know that
Jonah.
there's a couple. Okay, gotcha. Lena, I know we've heard from you several times about this. Is there any other comments that you'd like to make or?
Yeah, I just
thoughts?
wanted to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity because it actually did change my perspective and like about everything I do, and I made some really genuine friendships, and it like I didn't really have that many friends until I met them, and they're my best friends.
It's a strength, like when you're a super competitive person, and I'm not gonna try to hide that. We had an experience our last game, which put us in a kind of a quandary. And when you look at a group of people and they say to me, who's giving them permission to just crush him, like, just do it, go. They looked at me and they said, "Coach, that's not what we're about." And I said, "You're right, we're not." And it's this really, like, really cool moment where you're like, yeah, we're about the friendships, we're about the community, we're about all of these things, and we're winners every day because of these friendships that we made.
Thank you very much. Dan, did you
What
have?
did-
I would like to add that I was at Peninsula for something else, and I went out in the gym, breaking down the walls, and I went out into the commons, and it was right after Mr. Gregory had been at their game, and he was just standing there talking. He says, Lori, come here, I want you to meet the unified basketball team, and he's over there they're all fist bumping him, like, dude, you were at our game. It's like high fiving. They're high fiving me, and they're just super excited. So it's awesome to meet them.
Well, Natalie stole one of my lines I wrote down here, rock stars, Jenny, Joelle, and Wendy. Wendy's sitting back there quietly, but yeah, it's not like they think you're like rock stars. You guys are. I mean, just fantastic. And the mentor player thing, it's a little bit of a mix of Jenny's competitiveness. The game I was at, the mentor players, other than creating those interpersonal bonds, on the basketball side, their job is to rebound and assist. And here's the really cool thing. It doesn't matter if it's your team that's shooting the ball. If it's that end of the court and you're a mentor player, you rebound, and they might be wearing a different jersey, but you toss it back to them for the assist.
We pay really, really close attention to the scores because we really do want to keep everybody in the game. And our team rule was if our kids rebounded, then we transitioned. But if our mentors rebounded and we were too far ahead, they turned it right over. And they did it with class and ease and this really cool way that empowered everyone.
So at the end of the game I was at, after the rebounds and assists, here's where the Jenny Bice parts comes in. I think it was 22-22 with like 8 seconds left, and we rebounded on their end of the court. We did not assist. We took it the length of the court, made the layup to win the game. I said, okay, Jenny's coaching. So, we're going to keep them in the game, but when it comes down to the last 8 seconds, we're going for the W. So, yes, it was very well done.
There's some other people who did a better job at the
Yes,
friendship
that's
part,
right.
okay?
It's very well done. Very well done.
Thank you very much. And then you have Dr. Potts?
Yes, yeah, just real quickly, and I know Lori was at Breaking Down the Walls. I think other board members were going to attend. I had an appointment one of the Tuesday morning, and I tried to slip in the gym quietly. You don't get to slip into the gym quietly, and so before I knew it, I got called out and engaged in the process. And I had a great time for the time I was there. I thought it was excellent, and I will turn it over to Dr. Potts to talk about it.
First of all, I say thank you to our teachers and our paraprofessionals. I mean, it's not hard to be inspired by such wonderful professionals. So thank you for all that you do for our students and for this team in particular. And you should know that Jenny Buys, I think you participated in every day of Breaking Down the Walls.
I did. I did. It was a little rough, but I did it.
And she asked me if she could do that. I said, well, of course. And she said, well, I'd really like to be there for a few students with whom I work on a weekly basis. Oh, yeah, all right. So anyway, thank you to our teachers. I just want to give you a little bit of information about Breaking Down the Walls, and I think Andrew has a video that he's going to share regarding some of the students at Gig Harbor High School. But anyway, we had about 600 students from across the district, high school students, participate in Breaking Down the Walls. There was a nice mix of community members as well. And thank you to the board members who took time out of your day to come and participate. It was truly awesome. The program is based on a theory that if you know somebody's story, you treat them better. And that's a human thing, and that's a good thing. And so that's basically the program. And I just want to read you just a few comments from some of the students who wrote reflections after, and then we'll move right on. What would you say Breaking Down the Walls is all about? And here's what 3 students wrote. It's about breaking down social barriers in our school. It really brings everyone together school-wide to help change, or in our case, improve the overall culture. One student wrote, it was amazing. People connected with each other, and it was a lot of fun, and definitely worth it. If it happens again, I'm doing it. Another student wrote, I would say that it is learning about the love and friendships that we can build by doing simple acts of kindness every day. Another question that was asked on the reflection form was, what did you learn about your school today? And I've read almost 400 of these because I was really interested to learn what people learned about Peninsula High School in particular. One student wrote, I learned that we all want to connect and that we are supportive of one another. We are willing to try new things, and today we rose to the occasion, and I'm so proud of Peninsula High School. That was from a student. There are so many different people here, but a lot are going through the same things. It kind of helps me feel supported and connected. I learned that many people in my school also want to eliminate stereotypes and want to make this school a better place. And this is from an adult who wrote, our kids are dealing with a lot of outside stress and pressures and experiences that influence them on a daily basis. So in sum then, I think it was a very productive, positive program for the high schools in the district, and we're delighted that we had the opportunity to sponsor it. And thank you again to the school board and the district administrators for giving us the green light, and certainly thank you to the Gig Harbor Rotary for funding it.
Question?
Oh, just a comment. I was going to talk about this later, but I'd rather do it while you're all up here. I was lucky enough to go one day or part of a day in the morning at Peninsula, and then I went to the afternoon half at Gig Harbor. And I think it was the coolest thing I've ever seen done in a public school. It was, see what you did?
Don't talk about things that matter.
I know. It was, I can't say too much about it because I'll get emotional, but it was so well done, and it was phenomenal to see how the different facilitators at different schools, and they basically just did, I mean, you could simplify what they did by saying they did a series of mixers and just different, some of the things were just really silly, like, talk about 2, 3, things that are just really, really surfacey things, but then you'd rotate, and so but you're looking around the room thinking, okay, so now you have the senior, really popular athlete guy talking to the freshman girl, like people that would probably never interact in the hallway, and then they're high-fiving, and he's having people promise to say hi when they see each other in the hall, but then it progressively got more and more intense, or at least important as the day went on, and things that people were, and then I saw Jenny at Gig Harbor one, and anyway, I won't go on too long about it, but it was fantastic. Was it your idea to have, I know it was funded by Rotary, but where did it come from, the idea?
Well, I'd experienced it in a different district, and it seemed to be appropriate for our district.
It was incredible. So I was, and as a board member, I was just really proud because I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about great ideas at this table, but this was, I felt like pretty quickly went from a great idea, just as far as talking about the Healthy Youth Survey and how can we make the culture better, to actually sitting in the gym watching the culture get better. So, shout out to both high schools.
Yes, thank you very much. Was able to participate as well, and it was phenomenal. I agree. It was one of the best things I've seen in high school. It was also fun. My kids got to participate, and especially my high school son, who, when he comes home from school, how was school? Good. And that's about all I hear. And I said, how was breaking down the walls? It was awesome. Let me tell you about it. Best 20-minute talk I had with my son in a long time. So thank you very much. And it was fantastic to see Rotary not only help fund this or funded it, they were all there. And so it was fantastic. It was definitely a community builder as well, outside of our walls, while we were bringing down walls in Peninsula. Nice job. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Was this something we could do annually?
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Well, it also, on that, my middle schooler heard about it and then started to asking about it, and there was a handout, and so he's reading through it, and he's like, I'm going to take this to Harbor Ridge. We're going to do this at Harbor Ridge. So you're going to be learning more about it later. Okay.
Yeah,
Anything else,
thank
Cam?
you.
Just one final thing.
Oh, the consent agenda.
Yeah, just wanted to comment quickly on the last agenda item on the consent agenda, and that is the open doors agreement with TCC. And that's also what is commonly known as Fresh Start. And I just wanted to give you just a quick glimpse of what that is really all about. As we look at pathways, and we find a variety of pathways everywhere from the selective college pathway for some of our students who like to accelerate. Again, when we look at 100% of the kids, how do we find that right niche for all of them? Fresh Start and Open Doors is more of a retention dropout retrieval program. And so TCC, Gig Harbor, has a new administrator. She approached us in the fall. A variety of the building administrators and district administrators sat down and had a conversation with them, and we kind of played it out over several meetings throughout the year. Yes, Olga. And decided that this was a good pathway, and it's a pathway for a small group of our students. And that's some of our older students, 17, 18, 19, who have sufficient credit deficiencies. There was a comment at the last board meeting, and I wrote it on a sticky note, put it on my desk, and we don't have the data yet. We're keeping James busy on other things, but we're going to get that data on kind of dropout data. And when we think about our older students, especially 18, 19, even into 17s, those that are significantly credit deficient, they start to not see a light at the end of the tunnel. And so how do we create a pathway? Even though we'd like to own 100% of those pathways, sometimes we need to look to partner. And this is a partnership that provides an opportunity for some of those students that, for whatever reason, the challenges they faced have put them behind in credits, and this is an opportunity for them to make a connection through TCC. When they complete either their AA or their high school diploma, TCC really tries to connect them with post-secondary ed in some of the TCC programs, whether that's an EMT paramedic program, whether that's a cybersecurity program, whatever the variety of programs might be. And so it does develop a pathway, excuse me, for a variety of our kids. The initial idea is to start with a small cohort of about 20 in the fall. We're looking at probably about 15 of those 20 coming from our schools, while the other 5 would be dropout retrieval students that we used to have that are somewhere out there. Not starting a new cohort winter program, winter quarter, but starting a second cohort in the spring quarter with, again, another 20, 15 of our current students and another 5 of dropout retrieval. So just wanted to give you a little more of a glimpse than what you see in the contract there.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Peninsula High School. And John. Thanks, Dan. And friends. Andrew Frost, welcome.
Yes, so have Andrew here from Gig Harbor High School is going to talk about those same 2 topics, unified sports and breaking down the walls. If it's a little shorter than Peninsula, I'm the taskmaster behind that. I only gave him a 10-minute limit, so but I think you'll get a chance to see kind of the contrast between, unified sports can look one way at one school and another way at another school. So you'll get to see that, and then how that other program, the Breaking Down the Walls, was really impactful at both schools. So, Andrew.
Great. So actually, at Gig Harbor High School, we've been doing unified PE all year. And that's what's been really cool is to watch high school students connect with their peers. Instead of you hearing the story from me, I interviewed kids to talk about it. I also have another girl who was really impacted by Breaking Down the Walls and gave a very an awesome not plea with her kids during the time, but I thought, you need to hear her voice. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
PE is an opportunity for kids to connect with their peers and create a community through sport and play, and to make friends. For example, I see kids from that class and they say hi to me every day in the hallways.
Unified PE meant to me so much because it really touched me in learning about the kids and like how special they are. And I love the class because it just like really opened me to new levels of my learning, and it taught me a bunch of life skills.
Hi, I'm Deb Hughes, and I'm one of the ET&T teachers here at Gig Harbor High School. I've been really excited this year at all of the strides our building has made and how we're showing the heart of our building and our community by starting this unified PE class. To grow on that, we are also starting unified soccer this spring, where we get to have our disabled athletes on a team with our non-disabled peers. And I'm just really excited to see the growth building wide and what this means for both sets of kids, whether they're disabled or not disabled.
Tell us about your experience with Breaking Down the Walls.
My experience with breaking the walls was that we're not all different. We're all alike in some certain ways. And, sharing your story with others and trusting them with that information, and like to be able to speak up for once and let people listen to you and try to understand you better.
What is the power of you telling your story?
The power of me telling my story is for people to be aware of what I've been through, and maybe someone that they've been through but they don't want to speak up, and I wanted to be the one to speak up for them, so like we're all aware of it, so it's in our mind, and so we could try to help each other.
What do you want to see for Gig Harbor High School based on this Breaking Down the Walls experience?
What I want to see in Gig Harbor High School is more connections, listening to one another when we need help, like when we need a hand, we help each other up, and trusting each other a little more, but also giving us the support that we need, and so we can give that support to them. Try to do more for the school and consider what would make our lives easier, and even in the future, how to make it easier for others.
So actually, Mayana is an awesome kid, and she's new to our school. But the great thing is she's able to see the needs at our school, which is deeper connections, build trust, and really break away the perceived notions that we have walls in our school. And the reality is our kids, they love each other, and when they know their story, they're going to do amazing things for one another. So I want to thank Peninsula High School, Dr. Potts, for bringing this, because I know that there's a future in this opportunity for our students to be part of this, and that will change the culture for our schools and create more winners versus perceived winners. And that's why I'm excited to see that, as well as our unified PE and unified athletics.
Thanks, Andrew. Question?
Very cool.
Was a unified PE, was it one class?
Yes,
you
it's
could
one
sign up
class.
for and
Yeah,
take
we
credit
actually
for-
had, Rikiza's a varsity athlete, and he, as well as many other kids, after, it's a third period class, so after that is lunch, and you'd see all the kids sitting together and talking with each other, building these connections from students who never had that type of engagement with their peers. And it's fun to watch them play together and create community together. One day, it was, the weather wasn't great outside, both gyms were being used, and so what Unified PE did was they took out board games, and kids were playing board games together, and I thought, how cool is that? So our kids were teaching the game, but also learning how to play the games together, so I thought that was pretty special as well.
Excellent. Thank you. John? Oh.
Is there room for more? Is there the opportunity for another class? You say there's just one right now.
Yeah, it's one class. It's our ET&T class, which is a class with different severity of disabilities. And so that's the class that we have during that period. And I see this class running for as long as Gig Harbor High School's there.
Are there kids that are unable to get into that class that are not, is there room for another class?
No, I would not say there's room for another
Okay.
class, but
Okay.
specifically, this is the class for those
Nice.
identified students.
Just want to
Yeah.
make sure nobody's being left out.
Yeah, we definitely would make sure.
Yeah.
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 And for the mentor students in that class, was it a volunteer basis, or how did you pick who was partnered in that?
Volunteer, but to start off, we recruited kids, and I can say to a T, each kid who's been a part of it as a gen ed student has been radically impacted by that experience. Similar to the stories about unified athletics. So I'm excited to see what unified soccer will bring. Similar relationships, and I've already talked to a couple of kids who are excited about being on a team.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool to see what that's going to look like.
John, any more?
I just think you see the potential now that we're starting to see how these, what the impact this can make, that it can spread to different sports and classes and maybe clubs and other ways of just making sure that we're including all kids in all the types of opportunities that we have, and how having each kid really build that empathy for each other. I'll kind of follow up from breaking down the walls. My daughter had very similar experience with Deb. My daughter was very effusive about wanting to talk about breaking down the walls after she participated at Gig Harbor. She commented specifically about the fact that there was, a lot of kids that she's been going to school with for a long time that she didn't know some of the things they'd been through, and it kind of built her empathy for them, and that she interacted with kids that she also never interacts with, and saw that. So it was a powerful day. I'm just, last thing I want to go over today is another follow-up from a previous meeting, which had to do with the Pioneer Interest Survey. So I know Dr. Jarvis kind of teased that earlier in the study session, that I would have an update for you. As of about an hour and a half ago, we had 358 students that had expressed, them or their parents had expressed interest in attending Pioneer. It's only been open since Valentine's Day, and we still have about 3 more weeks till March 18th is when that closes. Oh, and you pulled it up. Mine was even more recent. We've added 4 since the one that Brooke captured there. So, one of the things that we are really happy about, you can see on the bottom right-hand side of that grid, is that we have a great distribution between all the grades. One of the things that we feared is that wouldn't happen, but no, it looks like we're getting really good distribution. In fact, even more first graders than kindergartners, which is a little surprising to us. The other distribution that you can't see on that graph is from which schools is the interest coming. And we really, helping with overcrowding is a big piece of this. And so we wanted to, oh, there it is there. It's just that's a scroll down. You'll see the highest graph there is coming from Discovery, which is our most overcrowded school. So we're very encouraged to see that. We kind of expected that with the proximity, but it was very affirming to see that. And then you'll see our other most crowded schools pretty much right in behind that, with Voyager, Purdy, and Harbor Heights in the next three. And it's also very encouraging to see interest from all of our schools. So that was a great piece of it too, and that we have interest from the Key as well. So overall, we couldn't be happier with what we're seeing so far. Numbers keep rolling in, and we expect that, you know, our goal of having 400 students filling the 5 grades with about 80 students each, looks like we're on a good track to hit that.
You did say trust, yeah.
Yes, you know, you build it, we hope they come, and it looks like they're coming.
That's phenomenal.
Now, remember, we will give a call to every family after the deadline closes, and whether we have a lottery or not, depending on how these numbers come out, asking them to confirm their interest. And this is just interest, but it's still very encouraging.
So if it closed today, you wouldn't be doing a lottery?
If it closed today, we wouldn't need a lottery for any grade, no. We'd be under our 80 for
And
each.
families would be able to be together and?
Yeah, everyone would be included, yeah. But on the current trajectory, we may exceed some of our caps at some of these grade levels.
Thank you. Tim, Lauren?
Thank you.
Just talking to the people down at Evergreen, they didn't want to lose any of their students.
Yeah.
So I think they're fighting against you.
Well, we have a little interest, which we like,
Every
but
elementary school,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
love their
they
kids.
felt, they
For
got a
sure.
community
Yeah.
down there, so.
yeah. If this is any indication, we won't be rating them too heavily. So, but there may be a few students the school's the right fit for Evergreen, and that's great.
But it's really hitting the most overcrowded schools
Yeah.
significantly, which is great.
Any
Lena
other
or Ashley,
questions?
do you have questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for the video. Cool.
Okay, moving on to Department of Learning and Innovation, Chris Hagel, Melissa Weisner, and Natalie Boyle. And John Yellowes, please. Sorry. Thank you. And not, where's Natalie?
We've conscripted John Yellowes to join us.
Scripted.
It's a tier 1 work. And triple work score.
Look it up real quick. Okay.
And really because of the work that we do, so much of it is not a singular department. So it makes sense that we're here to share that information as a team. That's how we work, so. All right, who's ready?
You are.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to give you some updates on elementary STEM adoption. And some other adoptions, but I also want to recognize the work that the TOSAs, the instructional facilitators, are doing to support this work, led by Natalie Boyle. So,
Thank you.
of course. So, first of all, our K-12 STEM, our K-5 STEM adoption. They are now working on their second curriculum. They each piloted both of them. That way you get a good look at both. So they finished the first round, and now they're on to the second round. And they'll finish the field test of the second one by March 20th, and then we'll have an adoption committee meeting on April 2nd, and those are the next steps. So consensus around the actual one selection of recommended curriculum. At that point, we'll have a parent viewing and feedback period. It'll go to IAC for review and discussion, and then we'll bring IAC's approval to the school board as a proposal, as our recommendation.
This is STEM for K through 5?
This is K-5, okay. Ashley is the K-12 STEM
K-12
instructional
STEM,
facilitator,
but
but
we're
it's a
looking at
K-5 STEM adoption.
Okay.
Pre-calculus adoption update. So this is led by our secondary math instructional facilitator, Chaya Venkatesh. And we were working through a pilot at both high schools, and we recognize the need to gain district-wide consensus on creating a common mission and values of math instruction. We're really kind of held up now. So rather than continue to look at materials that, without that vision, without that understanding of what we're about, we decided to pause it. Yes, they're still teaching pre-calculus, they're using the materials that they had, and then we'll reconvene that after we have a chance to develop that that instructional vision and mission around math.
Who are the players in that? Deciding that?
It's, in terms of who will choose,
Yeah, is it teachers?
yes, it's teachers. We're just facilitating the process.
Okay.
And teachers from both high schools.
Okay.
All right, our newest one, secondary social studies, led by Allison Howard, who is our secondary instructional facilitator for social studies and English language arts. We had our first meeting February 6th with the high school group, and 7th, it is a 6-12 comprehensive adoption in social studies, but they are meeting separately for now. At some point, they will meet together to have vertical conversations about what happens in 6th grade, what happens in 9th grade, and so on. And we do have new social study standards that will finalize this September, so this is a great time to start looking at that. In addition to that, our current resources in social studies are incredibly dated. Most of them are at least 15 years old, and many of the online resources we don't even have access to anymore. They simply don't exist anymore from the vendors. So we really do need to move forward with this adoption. Just like with the STEM adoption, in every adoption that we'll do, we have a new adoption process for the year. And moving on, every school, every grade level, certificated librarian in this case because of the work of the secondary, special education, administrators, and EL also will be involved in that. And so, just like with the STEM adoption, we worked most of the mornings, the first morning working on consensus and what does that mean, and what does it mean to have a quorum, and how many people need to be there, and what's fair. And really, when I say we, it really was the teachers. Natalie led them in the consensus protocol and said, this is what it looks like, this is how it plays out, and they do the heavy lifting. And it was a lot of really good conversation, talking again about what are we looking for in social studies? What does social studies look like in the secondary peninsula district? You know, what experiences do we want our students to have? And so the intent with the adoptions, it's not, here's your book, now this is the curriculum. It's, what is our vision? What do we believe? And what are those experiences? And what are the standards? And how do we find resources that match that? Not, let's take a textbook that was written for a particular state, right? So Texas, California, New York typically have the big, they're geared to them because they're big states, and but Washington doesn't have its own, you know, national textbook. So, and we don't want a singular text, we want multiple sources. The only caveat that I gave to this group, other than to say the decisions are yours, and Natalie and I are not voting members of the team, they vote themselves, is that there has to be a diverse perspective in whatever we look at. And they had no issue with that at all, and we're very glad to hear it. So I'm really excited about moving forward with this group. It is an 18-month adoption, and we need that time because it is a heavy lift. It's a number of grade levels. There are new standards. And part of it is just planning budget. So you come off K-5 STEM adoption. So there's only so much budget, and we frankly have at least a 10-year hole in curriculum adoptions. And so to try to fill that hole all at once, although the need is great everywhere, we have to be very intentional and thoughtful about how do we kind of slice up that budget over the course of the years. So I'd love to do it all at once, but it's simply budget-wise and really in terms of capacity, not possible.
So this is not in piloting, but it will get to that. In all of this, how do teachers get, how does the committees get feedback from the students?
So they do have, with this particular adoption, we did send out a parent survey and a student survey. So we got some information from them about what do you think about social studies? What is it like? What are you learning? Is it, you know, are you successful? Kind of same parent-student, two different surveys, but parent-student questions. And then I can tell you, and I'm sure it'll show up here, but specifically right now in the STEM adoption, there are things that we have this teachers fill out. So talking about rubrics, and we're measuring it against best practices and what's out there, and you know what is highly rated and well vetted. But also the teachers will bring to the adoption committee, here's student work, actual student work that they did. so that they can look at it and see, this particular curriculum has kids do this. This particular curriculum has kids do that. And so they can have those kinds of conversations. And so that's how we get information back, at least right now. And it'll be something similar when we do the secondary curriculums.
Because I know students are very vocal about curriculum. I have the kids come home all the time, because they've been piloting, and they have strong opinions about what is, so I'm hoping it's more than just showing, because the work they did, there may have been a lot of pain behind it, or a lot of not joy behind it.
Right.
So it's more than just showing what they are accomplishing, but also how they're reacting to it.
Right, and I would imagine that we would have multiple points where we're talking with students to say, what do you think? We'll begin field testing in 6 through 12 next September, with the understanding that we'll field test all of first semester, and then we'll go through the process of making a decision on the curriculum. And it may not be the same thing at 6th grade. It may be one particular vendor or publisher at 6th grade, and it might be something different at 7th grade. That's all open. There's no hidden agenda on the part of myself or the rest of us in the district to say, this is the one we want. It's really what we'll be able to take a look at and what the best fit is.
Because we've had parents come forward in the curriculum adoption, and I think if their students are articulating something at home, that's probably where that's being generated. So if we can make sure the kids are being heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The math and the STEM, sort of fairly straightforward. Some subjects like history and social studies, you hear in national news that some districts across the country are wiping out parts of U.S. history because they don't like what happened. Even though I disagree with that, who sets the standards, the new social studies standards, and at what point do the parents get involved and to piggyback off the students? And what if the IAC, after the teachers say we want this, if they disagreed? Is there, I don't know if that came out right, but if it's piloted back with teachers and the teachers say we want this one, but the IAC reviews it, gets feedback from parents and teachers, or whatever, said we want to go with another one, there's more than one question, but where do the standards come from? And how do we decide? And can it, the board ultimately will approve the curriculum.
Exactly.
But before we get to approve it, will we get any kind of side-by-side of what's the difference or why we picked one over the other?
We can certainly make that available to you, maybe at a study session if we wanted to take a look at something.
But where do the standards
The
decide?
standards are Washington State standards.
Okay.
And those are, they rolled them out a bit and formalized the adoption of that at the state level in September of this year.
The state legislators make that decision?
The OSPI. Right.
OSPI, okay.
And so, what was the rest of your question?
Well, that was one of them, so OSPI determines the standards, whether I agree with them or not, doesn't matter. But once they're piloted, then it goes, the parents get to review it, and the students get to review it, and then the IAC reviews it, and then it ultimately goes to the board. So, at some point, it could, it's an 18-month process. I know some of our rollouts haven't gone great, and I was just trying to remind myself about the whole process.
Right. It is a new process that we started this year because we felt like we could do a better job with that, and we felt like we needed more voices at the table, and we needed to, again, change the paradigm of here's the text, now let's do this, or here's the 2 texts to choose from. So we're really looking at multiple resources. A text may be an option. It's certainly not off the table, but I would expect, especially with social studies, we would have really, really rich texts that come to us, either from open ed resources or, all of that. What does that look like?
Another question is, if the school board ultimately said we disagree with OSPI and we don't vote to approve a new curriculum, what's the blowback from that?
That means that I would have diminishing resources in order to provide to my teachers.
Okay.
Because right now we have textbooks from 2004.
I don't doubt that we need to be updated. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And you asked about IEC. So IEC is comprised of, largely it's teachers. And some of the teachers I would imagine would be on that committee as well. And it would be so it's so well vetted that any questions they had, I think we could answer very clearly. And it's like I said, it's a completely different process than one we've used in the past. Much more intentionality, much more inclusion, much more opportunity for, especially for teacher voice and student voice and parent voice
Yeah.
along the way.
Okay. Thank you.
Melissa, I know it's a committee, but can you tell us IAC?
Sure. It's Instructional Advisory Committee, and it's one of those committees that's required by state law that we have, and its composition is, I lead that, and there's administrative representation from the elementary, the middle, the high, and then teachers. Each school has a representative as well.
Okay. You mentioned it's a new process. Our board policy and procedures are up to date to accommodate this, or vice versa?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
we-
The work
we
we're doing
updated them.
still exists under 2020, so
Fantastic.
we're
Okay.
still good.
Fantastic. Question?
All right. All right, woo-hoo.
So I'll start this. One of the big projects, of course, you've heard of quite a few times this year is MTSS that we're working on across the district, and we brought John Yellow-Lees with us, as Melissa said. You know, our department is working very closely with John and Lisa from Special or Student Services to work our schools through the MTSS work that we're doing this year, specifically focused on behavior right now, slowly transitioning to academics as we're ready. And so kind of we wanted to share at the beginning here how the district is leading this this work. And this is a graphic that we've kind of adapted to fit what we're doing here in the Peninsula School District. So we do have at the kind of at the center, we have an implementation and planning team that is split between our two departments. Cabinet that works on the vision and facilitation of MTSS, and we have brought in a coaching or training provider this year, kind of as a person to help us through this process. That then is, you know, we are meeting 5 times throughout the year in core team meetings with all of the schools and their teams, from which they bring us feedback. We've spent a lot of time even today going over the feedback from the schools, what they need, what they want to help them move forward with MTSS. And so just wanted to share kind of how that's working so far. We did break out kind of some of who are the specific people in those teams. It's a little harder to read here on the screen, but as we mentioned, the MTSS implementation planning teams, the 3 of us, Lisa Ray, James Cantline, and Natalie. And then some of us do overlap on cabinet, and then we all are working with the training providers. So.
Yeah.
John, go.
Can you go back?
Sure.
The green on it again, I want to
Yeah.
see. Okay. Sorry, continue on.
Okay, so, excuse me, I will be brief, but I just want to start by saying at the core of all of this work around MTSS is really that spirit of inclusivity and equity and meeting the needs of all kids. So I think it's been really cool tonight just to hear a little bit about some of the things that are going on in the district in terms of the breaking down the walls, unified PE, unified sports, kind of like Dan, watching Lena and her teammates represent the district in such an amazing way, and unified basketball has just been amazing this year and just represented our Peninsula High School in the district so well. So that's a lot of what Tier 1 MTSS is all about, is that inclusive piece and how do we go about meeting the needs of all kids. So this first slide here is really just an overview of the work that we've done this year to date, where we started off in August with kind of an all-school, all-staff introduction during our lid day. We had a presenter come in and we talked about what is MTSS and kind of talked about the various components of that and discussed what we were going to do this school year and beyond in terms of building the system. Like Chris alluded to, we have 5 full days designated to train our MTSS teams this school year. They come and meet with us. We do training with them. The intent after that is that they go back to their buildings and they work with their leadership teams, site, SIP, their whole staff, and they're collaboratively developing their own systems back at the building. So there are some commonalities for sure, but what you're going to see at Gig Harbor High School is going to look a little bit different than what you see at Harbor Ridge, and a little bit different than what you see at Purdy Elementary also. So it's really personalized based on the school. And again, as we've talked about before, this is really a 3 to 5 year process. Our focus this year, again, like Chris alluded to, is the social emotional learning and behavior. We started there. to really build that solid Tier 1 foundation so that we can have a safe and predictable environment for students to come to school in, where they feel connected and engaged. And that component, as we further build that Tier 1 piece, will build a solid foundation for students to then benefit from learning in a more robust way. So as you can see up here, we've kind of identified things that we expect to see based on the work we're doing this year in place by the end of the school year and in advance of next school year. And you should be able to walk into any building now in the district and be able to see posters up on the walls that highlight school-wide behavior expectations that the staff there have developed collaboratively. Those then should be connected to classroom behavior matrices that you see in classrooms that teachers, grade level teams have developed collaboratively. And then based on those expectations and those agreements that have been developed at the school, there's been some lessons and prompts developed for teachers to be able to explicitly teach those behaviors. And if I'm a substitute teacher and I come into the classroom, I have some lesson plans and common language that I can talk about those expectations about with the students. Each school should also have a school-wide positive reinforcement system developed, and that is a way of, again, building that culture and acknowledging those behaviors that we want to see occur more frequently in the school. And then we're using student survey data, the panorama data, as well as the Healthy Youth survey data, and monitoring our progress and really addressing those needs that have risen to the top based on that data. This is just an example of one of those school-wide expectation posters. This is from Harbor Ridge, and you can see posters like this all over the building, and that's their acronym there, SOAR, and they're focusing on safety, ownership, attending, and being respectful. So you'll see that posted in the lunchroom, in the hallways, in various classrooms, and I think this next one is an example of a classroom expectation chart from the technology computer lab. So those are, again, based on the classroom and based on that content area or grade level, or developed collaboratively by staff pertinent to that specific classroom. So those are some of the things that schools have been working on to date. We're kind of transitioning into talking about more Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for behavior now for the rest of the school year. And like either Chris or Melissa alluded to, we're going to start integrating the academic side of multi-tiered systems of support as we transition into next year. So,
John, these are posters up in Harbor Ridge?
yeah, that's a poster from the classroom up on, I just snapped some pictures when I was there a couple weeks ago, and the previous one was a poster that was posted in the hallway. So those are posters that teachers have had input into, students. Harbor Ridge did a great job of bringing in their students and asking students what's important to you, what things do you want to see in place in terms of the behaviors that you see from each other, and you know, they, especially at the secondary level, high school level, kids have been a big part of this. So, yeah. And I think that's it.
I wanted to add that in addition to bringing teacher teams to us, we also have walkthroughs that we do with our consultant with each school. And so schools just basically can say what it is that they'd like from the consultant or from the team, and we're assigned certain schools. We go out and do the walkthrough with them during that day, and then meet together once we come back and say, you know, what are we seeing consistently, and you know, where do we see some barriers are, and of course getting the feedback from the schools to say, you know, what's getting in the way of you doing this work or supporting kids.
Yeah, I would just add that James put together a survey recently, has sent it out to our MTSS teams to get feedback from them to say, we have some trainings next week, what is it that you need from us to be able to, and a big part of what we'll be doing next week is having teams share out so that they can all hear, you know, what's going on at Harbor Ridge, what's going on at Purdy Elementary, what's going on at Gig Harbor High School, because I think bouncing those ideas off of each other is really helpful, and hearing some of the great stuff that's going on around the district is great.
Who develops the training then? So if they say we need training in this specific area, that comes to you and you develop the whole?
Yeah, we spent some time today with James and Lisa Ray, the five of us, just working on, and Natalie, working on the training for next week. We do have a consultant that we're working with also, so we'll kind of bounce things off of him, and he'll help us create what that training looks like. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up comments about getting feedback and then what you're doing with that, because when I was looking at your diagram, I know it's cyclical, but I saw the feedback loop, and then what do you do with that feedback? And it's going back down into the schools to say, here, we heard you, this is what we're doing. So I appreciate the additional. It's there, it just didn't, feedback looked like it stopped, but it doesn't. It continues to go on.
Trying to be very intentional around feedback, regardless
Awesome.
of the.
And I appreciate that, because I hear that from teachers and building administrators, is that they want to be a part of that process. So thank you
Absolutely.
for bringing them along. When will we have another healthy youth survey or the panorama or something? Like, is our work working?
Yeah, the Healthy Youth Survey is once every 2 years.
Okay.
So it'll be next year, I think. We just did one last year, yeah. And then Panorama, I believe, in the spring, we'll do another survey of students. So we should be able to have then we had a benchmark earlier this year, and we'll have a spring update and see if there's a difference in the
Good.
data. Yeah.
We look forward to that, James. Excellent. Anything else, Chris? No. Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to Student Services and Special Programs, Lisa Ray and Kim Hayes. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Jarvis and School Board, for having us this evening. We're going to address all the special programs that John didn't address when he talked about student services last time. So there are some other pieces that we do that we'll be kind of touching base with tonight. There are some other things that we do that we aren't going to talk about because we don't have that much time. But if there are any other things that you have interest in, we can certainly dig into that later on. I want to take a second to introduce Kim Hayes, who's our new EL coordinator this year for our English learners. And she's new this year and just really jumped in quickly and has some really great things to share about how we're taking some of the data that we have and the things that we're working on and really trying to make connections for kids and families in our family. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit, I'm trying to be brief about each one of these, but wanted to give you a little picture of each of these, and I do believe they're all very well connected. When we talk about early learning, we can't leave out what we do with early literacy or the connections that we make for our families in the, on the Key Peninsula around our connecting with our earliest learners, and then definitely connecting with our EL families and our students as well. So we'll dig into those tonight. All right, the first one we're going to talk about is early learning. We have a couple different kinds of programs in our district that provide services to 3 to 5-year-olds in a preschool model. We also do some parent engagement things, and then we use our While Kids measure to kind of, I don't know what happened, to measure whether or not we're successful in some of those areas. And so I want to talk a little bit about our preschool programs. We have 2 specific kinds of programs in the district. One is ECAP, which is our state-funded preschool program, and that is at 3 sites and serves 71 children who need to qualify based on their income level. So it serves our low-income families for preschool, and obviously it's free. Our developmental preschool program is in 3 sites this year. As you know, we've had some crowding, and so we have Harbor Heights and Purdy both housed at Pioneer, and I just want to take a quick second to say what an amazing opportunity that has been in a challenging situation to have 4 programs together, 4 teachers together in a place where they have been kind of isolated in a building where they're with a principal and a connection with other staff. It has been phenomenal. And so as we start to think about when space becomes a little freer, thinking about maximizing those kinds of experiences for our teachers and our youngest children is really powerful, and I'm excited about when we have some space to start thinking about what that could look like. We currently have 8 classrooms, half-day program, serving about 115 students with IEPs currently. That number will continue to grow throughout the rest of the year as we add about 8 to 10 every month across our system. A couple things that we've been really focusing on over the last couple of years is really figuring out a way to serve kids in the best way. So we have this half-day preschool program, and I'm particularly talking about developmental preschool here. ECAP is a specific kind of program, and we don't have a lot of flexibility with the model. But within our developmental preschool program, we were really pushing against the space and the number of kids we can serve in the half-day program. We were getting overloaded, and we had to think about adding another class, which we didn't have room, or adding support or going over in our class size, and that just isn't the best model for our young children. And so we looked at who we were serving and how could we find other opportunities to serve them. And so maybe a student who has an IEP for speech services doesn't necessarily need a full preschool model, although I will say that every child should have preschool, but they may not, in our system, they may not, and that allows for families to continue to be served in their community preschool, but also get their speech services in a different place. So we've been really working on developing a continuum of services that allows for all those variabilities, and that has relieved a lot of our pressure on our class size, which has been great. But it also just then says, okay, what does that mean for the kids that are still in our program, and how do we maximize that experience for them? So we've been really working through a lot of that, and the space challenges just continue to have been a area of focus, and we've had to put a lot of time and effort into finding locations after a fire and moving folks and getting them together as a team, and that just takes time away from other kinds of work, but they've done a great job, and we've managed to navigate that, and we will continue to navigate that as the next couple years arise. And the other thing that we do in preschool, I believe, is all about social emotional learning, and some of the things that our teachers do every day impact how kids learn to get along with each other and share and be a part of a school system and all of that. And I just want to honor that work that they do every single day may not have a specific call out of our MTSS system, but they are providing those resources and that pathway in the beginning of our experiences for kids. Let's see. The second area that we want to talk about for early learning is that we know that parents are their first teacher and best teacher, and so we provide a couple things that, particularly on the KP, where the access to high quality preschools and childcare is a little less, and so we provide Ready for Kindergarten. I believe this is our 5th year doing it, 3 times a year. We have about 150 families that come between both nights for the 3 times. We just had one on Tuesday at Evergreen, and a parent said to me, the best thing about this is I'm meeting families that my kids are going to go to school with, and I can talk to them about what's going on and how to support them. And I just think about what kind of connections we're making with them before they even walk in our doors, and that's really exciting. We also provide the Play to Learn program with the Tacoma Children's Museum 2 times a week out at the Key Peninsula Civic Center, which is great, drop-in, free, preschool-like program. They don't necessarily, the parents stay with them, so they don't run a preschool-like program, but they're doing sitting in circle and singing and clapping and learning how to work at a little center and all of those things that are kind of preparatory for being in school. So it's a great opportunity for families to engage with that and not have to pay for it in the area. So one of the things that we do is measure using our Walk Kids assessment to how well some of these things that we're doing are working. And there are a lot of variables to this, and some of the kids that we measure or assess at the beginning of kindergarten haven't been part of our system, and some of them haven't been a part of any system, and so we have all of that within this, but I want to highlight a couple specific things. One of the things that we continue to do a great job of in this community is provide literacy instruction or experience, I would say, to young children. So on average, about 89 to 92% of our kids come in annually ready for kindergarten, which is huge. I mean, that's a really strong, they've come with a lot of experiences. Our teachers know what to do when they get them, and we outperform the state by far in this. We also outperform the state in math, and math across the state has been a big concern, and kind of blow them up, and so I think that's really exciting. Our both district preschools and community preschools are doing a phenomenal job of meeting those needs of kids right away. And overall readiness is slightly higher than the state. This is a little challenging data because if you take the just not quite ready number, you are almost at, I think, 95%. And so there's a lot of kids who come pretty darn close to ready. Then there's some that are still needing quite a bit of support. And so, you know, we have to think about that as we do. As we're continuing to grow in that area, but, and we can continue to support our providers in that. And I also want to acknowledge that we've had a very slow but steady increase in social emotional readiness. This has been one that I know we have heard a lot of stories about how we have kindergartners who are a blown out and they're having a really hard time staying in school and all of that. I think that is true. We are seeing some more significant challenges with behavior, but not as many of the kids across the system are having that. We're seeing a lot of it, and the ones that we are seeing are in significant need, but across our community, we are providing a stronger response. The other thing I want to point out is that when kids have access to high quality preschool, like our ECAP or developmental preschool program, they outperform our peers. So across our district, low income students come in about 61% in demonstrating in social emotional readiness, and our kids who have participated in ECAP, this was just last year's data, we're at 83. So they had some experience, and that it made an impact.
Just so I don't forget, a couple years back, I know there was similar conversation when we were talking about early learning, and they said kids that went to preschool versus kids that didn't, they leveled off at third grade or something like that. Are you still seeing that? Is there any kind of, how long does that advantage happen? Do they ever catch up? I just didn't want to forget
It's tricky to catch it up. One of the things that they're finding is that the WA Kids data is a pretty strong predictor of what's going to happen when they take the third grade assessment, and so you know, we can sadly make some predictions about where our numbers will be when they're in third grade, and there is a lot of data that talks about that phase out of readiness by the time they hit third grade, but what we really have to do is make sure that what they're getting in kindergarten and first grade and second grade is high quality and continues to support them.
Right.
Well, a few years back, we had the 4-day kindergarten, and then we had that Friday where the kids could go additionally. So I went, did that gap continue to stay?
It's been a while since we've had that data. I think we're about 6 years out from that, and so I haven't run those numbers
That's
again.
okay.
But
That's okay. But I'm wondering if that. No, but I'm wondering if that's part of it. Okay.
Okay. So one of the other programs that I have the opportunity to work with is our federal program Title I, and so this is for our 4 lowest income student buildings, and that is Evergreen, Minter, KPMS, and Vaughn, and they're provided some additional resources to enhance the experience of their students. They enhance the educational experience, and so we use those resources really dependent on what their building's needs are. They write a plan, they have they tie it to their school improvement plan. A couple examples of what have happened is at KPMS, they've used those to provide some behavior supports and to rethink how they connect with kids. And Minter and Evergreen have looked at how they provide math support, and so it's really dependent on what their building needs are, and that's the beauty of it. It's some additional resources for kids that need that extra support. So we use a lot of those funds to do that, but we do some other things too. So we provide summer school programming. We partner with communities and schools to do that. In those buildings, we do some after-school programs at Evergreen and support that using Title I funds. We do some early learning things like Play to Learn and Ready for Kindergarten. And like I said, most of those funds go to the building to make decisions about how they're going to support their kids. The last thing I'll chat on is the Learning Assistance Program, and that is a state-funded program that's similar to Title I in that it's providing additional supplemental services to kids and additional resources. In our schools, we focus most of that work on K-4 literacy, and we do some summer programming, and we do focus on kindergarten transitions. We use the Jumpstart program that you might have heard about before is funded through LAP, which is a week-long pre-kindergarten experience right before school starts, so they get familiar with the building and school and teachers. But the bulk of our work is really focused on that supplemental reading instruction and providing interventions to kids who need that extra support in phonics, phonemic awareness, those early literacy skills. And then you can look at, every year we have to provide a report to the state, and looking at our data from last year, you can see that our LAP staff, which are certificated in paraeducators across our system, really focus their efforts on K2. And so they're doing a lot of filling of holes and gaps that maybe they're not getting in their classrooms, or they need an extra dose of, or they might need to have, they didn't have that, they missed it the first time, so they're going to need it again. So they really focus in on filling those gaps. I like to think of it, they've got a bucket, and we're putting
plaster or tape on all the holes around the bucket. In those 550 students, most of them, the average spent about 6.5 months in LAP. My goal is to reduce that. I would like to see them get really strong, good tier 1 instruction, and then in addition to fill those gaps, and then back in their classrooms and getting that core instruction again. And then we use DIBELS to measure that for this report, but they are growing about 10 months within that 6.5 months. So they're making lots of progress and they're growing, but I do believe we could, with our work with MTSS and focusing on our instructional vision and how do we make sure that every child has access to what they need, I think we can start to work on reducing that number a little bit. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kim. Before she starts talking, I just want to give a little context. When I started here in 2013, we had about 65 EL students, English learners, and she just told me that we have 220 today and about 100 that we are watching, monitoring, and she'll go into that a little bit as well. But the context of that, in just 6 short years, the impact of our, the needs, the response from our classroom teachers, it really is how do I respond to the student needs that are in front of me, and then how do we think about our staffing model, and we are working through all of that right now and looking for opportunities to grow the supports that we have. So.
Thank you, and thank you again for letting me talk a little bit about our English language learning program. So jumping in, kind of new this year, trying to figure out what the model we had, what the vision was, and then what we need to do moving forward, and sort of building that organically. So a lot of conversations with students, a lot of conversations with parents, and a lot of conversations with teachers. So we're kind of looking at 3 main areas tonight: the high school and the graduation rates, the classroom instructional strategies, and then our parent engagement piece. So high school felt really imperative when I jumped in because of the graduation rates. Talking to students, looking at schedules, and seeing, are we on track to graduate? What do we need to do? And how can we make this happen? So those are the numbers that I put up there tonight.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yes.
Question? Is that 58% of our 17 English language learning students graduated that year? So
yes.
I'm not going to do the math in public. The rest of
Yes.
them did not
Yes.
graduate.
That is correct.
Okay.
So, and again, I put the number of students there because 1 or 2 students can really impact that data. So just a quick example. We had 3 students at the high school level that dropped out last year, re-enroll over the last couple weeks, and then we had 1 student that just moved away, and we have another student coming in that's enrolling at the high school tomorrow. So if we're looking at 17 students, that data can really change quickly. But again, our numbers are growing, so we really want to look at supporting our high school students early on, right when they get into high school as freshmen, and making sure they're on track. So we've been talking about how that might look. So what we have been doing up to this point is a pull-out model where students are being pulled out, offered additional support, or there was talk of offering separate EL English classes, but we've never really had the capacity to do that. So we have 1 high school teacher traveling between both high schools. So 2 periods at one high school, 2 periods at the other, and kind of figuring out what students need. So basically sort of a separate model. And when we're looking at an inclusive and equitable education for all our students, that doesn't necessarily seem like the right thing to do for our kids. So we're looking at what would be a more equitable model. So what we would like to do, and again, these are ongoing conversations. This is feedback that's coming from students, from teachers, from principals, and from families. So sheltered instruction is really the model that we have in place, but at this point it's sort of a not really inclusive sheltered instruction. So we want to look at how do we support students in the classroom? How do our students have access to grade level content and to engaging courses? So one of the things we're talking about is maybe having a more inclusive co-teaching model, having an EL teacher with strategies that can be in a classroom supporting a teacher, a content area teacher, the math teacher, the English teacher, the science teacher, and working with the students in that context, but really also supporting the teachers who are also saying, we really want to include our students, but we don't really have the strategies. We don't necessarily know how. And so both of those pieces would go with that. We're looking at, there's a lot of talk about the opportunities for the pathways that students have now, and what might these pathways look like for our English language learners, and what opportunities are we offering those students to be in advanced courses, or look at different ways that we might revisit how this might look for an EL student. We've talked about sort of a wraparound model at the beginning of each year, sort of a staffing model where we have content area teachers, parents, the students, the family, liaisons, counselors, kind of sit and really map out that plan for students and keep revisiting where are we, what do we need, and are we on track for graduation, really. And then looking at that middle school transition too, because we're hearing that a lot too. That transition from middle school to high school is really challenging. So how can we better support students that are moving into the high school from middle school? I don't know how to do this. Okay. So then when we are looking at instructional support, some of the ways that we're really going to help hopefully achieve some of these goals for our kids. Summer school is one. So we had a summer school, actually a planning meeting today, so it was rather timely. And so previously, last year there was an elementary school, summer school. We had about 70 plus students from elementaries, all the elementary schools. And this year we'd really like to grow that elementary, middle, and high school. So we look at elementary, sort of a thematic unit. So we're looking at a gardening, horticulture type of a program this year, where the students would build a garden, receive the language supports they need that correlate with the content, science, math, reading, writing type of thing. Middle school, again, we would look at a transition piece, helping 8th graders transition to high school. High school, we're looking at a credit retrieval, and maybe going back and seeing what do the students really need, how can we fill in some gaps for some of our students that they really need the support, and what areas they need support. So we're looking at adding, actually I think today it just came out, more GLAD training for elementary school teachers and SIOP training for high school teachers. Those basically are those kind of sheltered instructional strategies that help teachers include all students, but they're also strategies that are great and engaging for all kids. So visual learning, hands-on, small group work, having pairs and discussions, things like that we can really be thinking about for all of our kids, but how does this really support our EL students? And how might this look in an MTSS kind of a setting? And again, we're looking at the pathways and partnerships. We are working right now, it's an example, one of the partnerships, one of the pathways, a bilingual route to teaching pathway. So we want to diversify our teaching staff. We want to support students in our community that we would like to have work for our district, and value their bilingual skills. In many cases, our students are multilingual, and really find a path to support those students if that's a direction that they want to go. And really also sort of look at the mindset, look at our students that speak more than one language as asset-based. You know, they're bringing this asset to us. We know how we value bilingual skills, and really how can we embrace that and let the students know and the families know what a gift that is to us to have them here. Okay, And so part of that is really reaching out to the families and letting their voices be heard, bringing their voices into our schools and sharing what they feel that their students need. So we just had our first parent workshop at Harbor Heights Elementary School. We'll have another one in the spring, and then we'd like to have them monthly next year moving forward. And the parents feel really comfortable once they feel like they have a voice. So we have, I think many people know Margarita Leas, our family liaison, has been amazing at reaching out to the families and supporting them with any questions that they have. So we want to just kind of keep the momentum going. So we'll rotate these to different schools, maybe even out community-based to have these family meetings. We want to reach out in the family's language, not just Spanish, but Russian or Japanese or Chinese, whatever our languages might be. So we just kind of made our first Spanish robocalls this year. So want to continue to reach out to the families. So whenever we have communication to our families, it would be great if we could have phone calls to the families. When we send out these surveys, if we could have those in the languages, that's just a great way to bring family voice into the community. So at our last meeting, our first parent workshop, we covered technology and accessibility. So we helped the parents access PowerSchool so they could get into students' grades, attendance. They could download the app on their phones because some of our families don't have computers. And that alone, they were thrilled to find out how to do it. It was amazing how I can look at my students' grades, I can see what's going on. Sharing with them ways that they can communicate with the school and ways that we can support that. Understanding and navigating the school system, because our system looks very different than the system many of our families are coming from, and how they view their role in regards to working with teachers is quite different. And then parent strategies for how they can support students at home. Even if you don't speak English, even if you don't know the material, there are some just basic great strategies that families can use at home to support student success. And then we talked a little bit about registration supports. So registration has opened, and our families are saying, we don't understand what these options are or what our students should be taking or how to sign up for these classes. So we want to bring together the families, the counselors, the students, and register together and go through that process together and really support the families so that they understand what this all means to their student. Because really, I think that's one of the things we keep hearing about. And then when we look at the students that are in high school and maybe they're not on track for graduation, that's part of what we want to be looking at when we're registering those students too. So is that my last one?
That is your
Okay,
last one.
okay.
I just want to take a second and commend Kim for the work that she's done in terms of connecting all the dots. So, she's worked with Amy on the communication piece. She's worked with tech and the DLI on bringing them in to help families connect to the technology aspect. And so she's really done a lot of reaching around and finding those folks who can help her navigate our new system and to her and help our families who are maybe not finding it as easy to access as possible.
And I just would want to add, so we've had really our students, the students that we got back into the school this year are students that we have prevented from dropping out this year. That was teamwork. The counselors, teachers at the schools, parents, family liaisons, Margarita, of course, just multiple meetings with families, helping parents that were struggling with basic necessities or students that were not coming to school for reasons that we would not have known if we didn't continue those conversations. I just have to say the team members at the schools and at the high schools, it's been amazing. So as our numbers grow, you know, trying to keep that momentum is something we really want to do. But I can say there's one student we've had since September, we've had probably 7 meetings with the family, and there has been no less than 7 to 8 staff members at every single one of those meetings. So, I mean, I'm impressed by the direction that we're going, because we have staff members at the schools that are just going above and beyond. So it's been great.
Any questions from you guys, comments?
I was, sorry, of the couple hundred you said that you have now that you're helping, how many languages do those children make up, and what percentage? Like, what's the highest percentage? I would assume Spanish.
Definitely Spanish.
How many total languages are you assisting right now?
So we have, that's our question. Because we have one or two that speak some languages, but predominantly Spanish, then Russian, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Arabic, French. And a number of our families too are, Spanish is actually their second language. They are multilingual, and many of our families come from Guatemala, and they speak the indigenous language. So we don't really, that never really comes up in the data as much, but that is a large percentage of our students are actually Spanish is their second language, English is their third. But our Russian and Spanish populations are both growing. Those are the two numbers that are really growing pretty quickly.
Chuck?
I would imagine there's a level where some of them can speak some, and so you kind of got to classify them.
Yes, so ELPA 21 is the name of the assessment, the English Language Proficiency Assessment that we test students on every year, that determines what language level they are from 1 to 4. And then that helps us sort of decide what supports that they might need. And then when we're looking at, once a student passes out of beyond level 4 on that assessment, then they are no longer served in the EL population. But we have, since 2017, we have about 100 students that have passed out of the program that are now in monitoring. And so that's in addition to that 200 plus. And that just basically says they're not directly receiving services, but they still need support. So those are the students that are fully out of program, but still definitely need language support. So it takes generally up to about 10 years for students to fully learn a language. So,
You know, when you're talking about the dropouts, are you talking about the English language dropouts, or are you talking about the dropouts in general?
For this, we were talking about.
yeah, just English language learners, yeah. And so some of the students some of the students, it was a matter of not being in the right classes. So that's one of the things that's why that registration piece is so important, because we really want to sit and look, make sure they have the English, that they're on track for the classes that they need to graduate. Because in some cases, historically, because they're English language learners, it was sort of assumed that they couldn't access the material for some of our grade level classes. And so that's something that's really important, that I think that's where that inclusive sort of sheltered co-teaching maybe model might look good for students that are not really getting the credits because they haven't had access to the classes. And that's a real, I think, important piece to think about.
Anything else on LAP or preschool or Title I as well? You're good?
Some things you said made me question, and maybe it'll go back over there. On the paras and the LAP
Learning
programs.
assistance program?
We must classify those students too somehow, 1 to 10, or, and the paras must be classified 1 to 10, or some, there must be some classification that you wouldn't put a beginning para with a student that needs.
Technically, in our LAP program, we have a pretty seasoned staff, that folks who are working with our struggling readers. We try to keep our most highly qualified staff with our most struggling students at that time. And I will say that the folks, the paraeducators that work in our LAP program, most of them have been there for quite some time and have been through quite a bit of training with their certificated team member. They do a lot of on the job right in the middle. Let me tell you how this is here's how you work with this student, and here are the materials that you use. They're not out there on their own. It's really a support team.
Okay.
And so we don't have any cases anymore where there are paraeducators who aren't working with a certificated lap teacher. They are all in it, and the teacher is helping to design that instruction for them to support them. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Anything else? Good? Lisa, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. We will, done with district reports, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
She can have it.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved by Chuck and seconded by Lori to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. All opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. I know we've had a couple comments already, but any other board discussion or comments that you'd like to bring up?
I just want to quickly point out, I know that we have some Boy Scouts who are working on merit badges for local government that they're learning about, and I know that they were planning on watching, so hopefully you're still watching. And I think they're doing some really great things in our community. So.
Excellent.
Just a quick shout out to Harbor Heights Elementary. I had a chance to visit there a couple weeks ago. I got invited to observe Mrs. Hayes' first grade classroom, so it's always the best part when you get to go out and see the kids and see the awesome staff in action. But I wanted to specifically mention, because I was so impressed by this, Principal David Bentler asked me to stop in and say hi, and he told me that there was two new families were joining the school the following Monday. They're moving to the area, and so they were coming in that day for a tour. So he said, if you want, I said, I'll go on the tour. I'd never been to Harbor Heights. And because they're the orcas, they have different pods of, like, activity pods. So this was the kindness pod, and it was really cool what they did. They had students that, one of the families had 2 siblings, and so they had a kid that's going to be in each one of their classrooms in the office for the tour, with also the staff person that was giving the tour. So all 3 of these new students got paired up with a specific person who will be in their class the following week. And so we had the tour, but then they just, skipped on ahead and were friends in about 30 seconds. And it was really cool to see, and I thought it was very ingenious way to do that. So
That's awesome. Excellent.
I liked the culture there a lot.
I am hoping that we will get briefed on some of the issues that were brought forth in the public comments section.
Okay.
Being in the community, I am friends with a lot of those people who are in those different roles. And so if there's some issues, I realize it wouldn't be appropriate to do it here in public. But
We'll make sure we get the
Yeah.
handouts that they gave as well.
Yeah, it's for both the commenters. Be nice to know what's going on. And, well, that's more of a question I can get later. I was just wondering about the classifications. I mean, we talked about the lap programs and stuff, but the paras and the students with disabilities, I assume there's a classification type thing where we marry up the paras with the right students when they're disabled. And again, I don't know how those work. And we've had presentations before. I think the last meeting or the one before that, we talked about the disabled students, learning disabilities.
Can we reach out to, Lisa, can you reach out to him and have that follow-up conversation?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, how that works. Yeah, again, paras, and I'm in the community and I hear from them, and sometimes you have to make, yeah.
All right, awesome.
Oh, it's always, the people that you want to speak to at the end have already left.
Yeah.
But, I've missed most of this year at the school board meeting. Missed some awesome things with breaking walls and unified basketball. Hopefully I can attend some unified soccer games. That sounds awesome. Piggyback off of what Chuck said, I think being on the school board for 6 years, I I've said in meetings before that, you know, I try, and other board members try not to be up here on an ivory tower, trying to pretend we have all the answers and that we can reach out and we tell you how to do your job. And I've tried over those 6 years to try and remember that I'm elected and I'm here to be at the 30,000-foot level, not get in the weeds and tell everybody how to do their jobs. Right. Being married to a teacher, a former teacher, son's a teacher, I certainly understand the importance of the classified staff, the counselors, the certificated staff, the cabinet, and how those all work together and they need to work to function correctly to help our kids. You know, for me, when I first got on the school board, and I really wish he hadn't left, but, you know, a new school board member can be naive. You know, I answer the blocked phone call. I'm like, I don't know who this is, but I'm answering. And I get the 6th degree of whatever we did, what we voted on, and so I don't answer block calls anymore. I learned over the years that if you respond to every complaint, every email you get, there can be liability issues there. I want to make sure that I get the right answer. I personally, and I know other board members over the years, get those complaints or get those, not always complaints, sometimes they're compliments, and forward those on to the appropriate, usually to the superintendent, but they don't fall on deaf ears. So I know over the years when people come to the podium and they express their concerns or their praise or whatever, we all take notes. We're all elected. I may not always agree with every school board member's opinion, but we all take the job serious. And so, and I think we all follow up. We may not do it the way you just did. I want to know more about that. I may do it more covert, you know, quietly, but I do take notes, and I'll go to Art, or I'll go to Dan, or to Karen, whoever, and follow up. But I typically, and I know other board members typically don't go to that person directly. They let the district handle it. Yeah. And I've done it over the years that way intentionally to avoid getting it wrong. I lean on the experts, John, Dan, Karen, everyone here, and so that I don't get it wrong, and so that we take it serious. But I just wanted it said publicly that we all take those things serious, and we don't get paid. We take a lot of heat, whether it's in email, phone call, in the supermarket, wherever it might be, but we all take our job serious. So I just want to be on the record for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, real quick, David and Art and Natalie and I went down to Olympia, and we had our legislative session. We got to meet with our representatives, Jesse and Emily and Michelle separately, and we were able to voice some of our concerns that we're feeling in our schools. And short session and not a lot of funding in this session, but they heard our concerns, and hopefully it's a precursor of what we can look forward to in the next session. So they too heard us, not on deaf ears, but it was good to go down there, and thank you guys for taking that trip down there. Just a shout out, and this is, you'd be interested in this. I have been to high school and middle school band stuff recently, both in district and cross district, and we have an amazing music program in our district.
We didn't talk about art. We didn't talk about art.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. I'm so excited. Couple other things. Amy, just want to shout out, been doing great things with communications, very proactively, really appreciate it. Getting a lot of feedback from parents that they appreciate your work, so thank you. And Art, I know that you've been busy with long-term planning and facilities. I wanted to say thank you for the educational programming and the other stuff that you've been doing, and encouraging these folks and empowering these folks to do their jobs and to bring in the buildings. There's some phenomenal work being done.
It's fun listening to them.
Yeah, right, it is. That's why I was so excited about tonight's meeting, to hear all of those reports. So thank you. And then I wanted to give a shout out to our PTAs and VPOs. They have been doing phenomenal programs at the schools, STEM nights, literacy nights, really cool enhancements into our schools. So thanks to those parents and schools for engaging those PTAs. So with that, anything else? Last comments? Okay, it is 8:09 and this meeting is adjourned.